He dropped this here onto my face just before the end of the second round, and he split my eyebrow open, and I could feel the bone, and you just see the blood running down my face. One of the greatest moments of my life, and then the guy punches it and it just rips open again, and there's something that I love about just the chaos of fighting.
How can you get that comfortable in that fucking difficult a situation? That Ankalaev moment, like, that's one of the best finishes in UFC history.
It doesn't matter if you win, you lose or you draw. What you're doing here is you're doing something that scares you, and that's the best thing you can do. I was going through a big moment in my career, and then they said, you want to go to Brazil and fight Johnny Walker. You beat Johnny Walker, you're fighting for the title. I'm in, I'm walking out and they're chanting, oh, I'm a hurt, you're going to die. And get into the octagon, the place, I'm talking like, they don't care if you win or lose, all they want is the wars. It's a scary feeling knowing another man's going to try and cave your head in. And I just go, fuck it, let's go. And I remember just rushing forward and just unloading, man, boom, 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 boom. I'm in the middle of the octagon and I'm like, fucking hell, let's fucking go.
The Gentrified Stoic Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Gentrified Stoic Podcast, episode 2. This week's guest is none other than UFC legend and Scottish cult hero Paul Craig. After joining the UFC at 25 years old, Paul quickly became one of the most exciting and unpredictable fighters in the sport. He was known for his elite submission game, taking dangerous fights at short notice and producing some of the most dramatic moments in UFC history. From that last second submission over Magomed Ankalaev to becoming the first ever Scottish fighter to headline a UFC main event, Paul built his whole career on resilience, self-belief and an ability to stay calm under immense pressure. What makes Paul interesting goes far beyond fighting. Since he retired last year, he's thrown himself into new challenges with the same intensity. Marathons, Ironmans, endurance events and pushing himself mentally and physically in an entirely new ways. He also hosts the Leathered podcast alongside Ross and Craig and runs the Nomad Fight Camp in Alicante, bringing together people from all walks of life through combat sports, discipline and shared struggle. We'll get into all of that today. When Paul and I sat down to record this, I had a rough structure in mind, but within 5 minutes of chatting and with so many great pieces coming up, we thought that the best thing to do was to hit record and just to let the conversation flow. So this episode became a two-parter, loosely structured, but with so many amazing takeaways from Paul's enviable life. We speak about mindset, pressure, masculinity, purpose, mental health, identity, fighting, and what it actually means to test yourself. A quick warning before we begin, there are mentions of suicide, drug use and sexual abuse throughout the conversation. We don't go into graphic detail and it's really not that dark, but if those subjects might be triggering for anybody, then please take care while listening. I also want to say clearly that this conversation is based on our own experiences and perspectives. We're not pretending to have all the answers, we're simply having honest conversations and hoping that something within them might help someone else. If there are any listeners out there who are struggling, we'll share some helpful links within the comments. But also please feel free to get in touch and we'll do what we can to support you getting the help that you need. So sit back and enjoy part 1 of episode 2 of the Gentrified Stoic with Paul Craig.
Did you ever try the ketogenic coffee? Or it was like Bulletproof coffee?
Bulletproof coffee, aye.
So I'd been drinking that and no understanding the whole concept of it, because my career went from being a guy who was just training to then being a professional fighter. Within the space of like 2 years. I had no concept of, when I first started MMA, I had no concept to what I was doing right or doing wrong. So then the person who the vast majority of fighters at this point were leaning into was Joe Rogan. He was the guy who had all the information. He had all the information through his podcast. He was bringing in some really good people. So then he started like pushing this Bulletproof coffee. Must be good, Joe Rogan's doing it. So I had started making these Bulletproof coffee. For anybody that doesn't know, it's you would put coconut oil and grass-fed butter into a blender with coffee, like just black coffee. You'd blend it all up and make like this nice. First few times I was like, that's a bit ropey. Very first time I tried it, it's actually a funny story. It was like an in-service day and I was going to do like a training day when I was working as a teacher. So I make this Bulletproof coffee, I take it in the car and I'm going away up, drinking my coffee. Oh, pure fats, pure caffeine. ripped through me, man. I had to pull in and I had to go and do a shit in the forest, right? So I'm like, I'm leaning against this tree and so I had nothing to wipe my ass with, so I had to take my pants off and toss the pants. So then I jumped back in the car, and that way I was sitting in the meeting like in service day, and I looked down and I could just see like spots of shit out of the back of my trousers.
Oh no, awful when you've been hitting the
because it's hitting the gun, so I just get some backsplashes. So I'd started doing this Bulletproof coffee, so I had no idea like what it was for, like to try and slip your body into using fat as an energy source, whereas my body was very dominant in carbohydrates. So anytime I was doing this, it was like I wasn't doing anything else keto. It wasn't like I was having high protein meals. I was still eating my normal carbohydrates, some veg and some protein with every single meal, so my body was never in ketosis. I was just putting in more fats, more saturated fats into my body, and there wasn't any point.
Aye, and that's a fucking massive risk now when you've got this like
information.
Aye, you've basically just got a load of people on Instagram that are like, don't get me wrong, I think they mean well. It's like, right, this is the latest wellness thing. What's good examples I've seen over the last few weeks? But they'll be like, oh, here's a 30-day challenge, or here's a good one, is the gut clear-outs. Right. Everybody's talking about clearing out guts, but like, if you're adding that into something that's already quite complex, or you're putting that in at the wrong time, it can be the complete wrong thing for you at the wrong time. Like, I had a gut infection, I had a treble gut infection last year. Fucking terrible, the recovery was horrendous. And I kept seeing this, do a gut cleanse, that's the word I was looking for.
Yep.
If I had done a gut cleanse at that time and emptied out my already empty guts, I would have been like hospitalised.
Totally destroyed you.
Totally done.
Just a little bit of information, and that's what it is. A little bit of information. If you'd heard this, and clearing out your gut would be a very good thing if you're healthy and you've not got any gut issues.
Aye, or the other end, you know, you're 30 stone and you've been feeding your body shite for years and years.
Like we'd been speaking about the cold water manipulation before we'd come on here. I had, same again, had read just a blurb by somebody. It was Ross Edgley, who had said he did 20 minutes in the cold water. So I was like, I'll be able to do 20 minutes. Ended up with hypothermia, ended up for the next hour just jackhammering, like couldn't get any heat into me. And it's that, just a little bit of information, and that's what Joe Rogan was doing. He was releasing information, and we have to take it. We have to take it all in, and you have to digest it, and you have to like do your own research. And so it's fine for me to say, eating 90 grams of carb an hour for a marathon runner is great. That's great for me. Might not be great for you. Might get you end up like with stomach issues or that kind of stuff. So that was my early career advice, was coming through Joe Rogan, and it was bro science, we called it.
Bro science, aye.
And you would get into the gym and guys were then giving you more information. Oh, I've been doing this in my diet, or I've been doing this with my training, and you're just adding all these wee kind of bits. And somewhere along the lines when I became a full-time fighter and had all this extra time, I sort of had this moment where I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do after being a fighter. Because I had this in my head that I was only going to be a fighter for a little while. So I'd been a teacher for 7 years, had then stopped teaching and went full-time fighting, because I had this moment in life where I was fighting in the UFC and I was being a Monday to Friday teacher, and then I was being a weekend warrior as a fighter. Fighting in the UFC doing this, you can't do that. So I had to make this decision, and from both me and my partner, it was a very intense time, because she didn't want me to leave a full-time job. You imagine your partner comes in and says, listen, I'm just going to leave a full-time job and try and become a fighter. Although I was still fighting the UFC, I was only making 10 and 10 my first fight. 10 grand to fight, 10 grand to win. By the time you pay tax, by the time you pay your coach, by the time you
promoters,
pay
gyms.
Yep, everybody gets a kickback for it. So you're only making like a couple of grand. So my partner's like, I don't think it's a good idea, Paul, blah, blah, blah. And she was 100% wanting to support me, but she just couldn't do it. And I eventually just went, nah, I'm doing it. And I just pulled the trigger. Just by luck, I had made 50 G's my first fight, or I wouldn't have been able to do it.
That was because of the
submission bonus.
Fight the night thing.
Second fight in the UFC, lose, so I only get paid one. It moved from 10 to 10, so you get 10,000 to win, 10,000 to show up, and it moves up to 12,000 to win, 12,000 to show up.
Right.
So I only get one payment then. So then now money's sparse, because I've only got 12 grand US dollars. By the time you bring it back to the UK, tax in the US, tax in the UK, coaches, blah, 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 blah. So this money started to dwindle down. My partner's like, what have you done? What have you done? Yes, we've got a house to pay for, we've got cars to pay for, all this kind of stuff. So there was a point where I was like, right, I'm only going to be a fighter for a little bit of time. I had put a number on it when I was going to retire anyway, and it worked out roughly about that time. But I had all this extra time where I'd been used to planning teaching sessions, professional learning, all the stuff that goes along with developing myself. So then I went back to college to then look at sports and become a sports scientist. Went to college, university, so then I could upgrade myself, but also help myself in my career. So then started learning about all the nutrition, started learning about all the elements of how you can improve fitness-wise, physical-wise. And then I looked at what I was doing, I was like, I'm not even doing any of this. And I had a team round about me, and I'm like, without the team I had at that time, I would never have made it to the UFC, and I'm very clear about this. But we were fumbling in the dark.
Really?
We were like massively fumbling in the dark. Like the body, like I'm going to keep it pretty simple, but the body's basically split up into 3 areas where you've got your aerobic, anaerobic, and then your ATP-PC. So it's your short burst, your mid burst, and your long burst. So your ability to go all day is what marathon runners, and that's aerobic. And that's needed for long distance running, it's needed for cycling, it's needed for if you're doing distance. Where MMA falls into the bracket is it's a 15-minute fight. It's a sprint. So you need to work that aerobic and that ATP-PC glycolysis phase where you're burning as much energy as you possibly can to get as massive bang for the buck. I wasn't doing any of it. We were hitting pads, and we were hitting pads for long periods of time. Bum, 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 bum. There was no, if you looked at me, you would see, excuse me, you would see I wasn't a big, thick guy.
Yeah.
I was lean because I was always in that aerobic. I was always going distances. And that's why it works out well that I'm in this world now, because they were the areas I developed being a fighter. But we weren't hitting the right stimuluses to get development as a fighter to be a world level fighter. And it wasn't until I went to college and uni and I realised I'm way off the mark. And then you then bring in nutrition and I'm like, I'm massively off the mark. Putting butter into my coffee and fats when my body is requiring carbohydrates for quick action, explosive power, and I wasn't doing any of it. And then it resulted in me arguing a lot with my coaching team at that point, and it ultimately led to me leaving that coaching team and going to another coaching team to then work with guys who I believed were in the right frame of mind and were on the right page with me moving forward. And that's why I ended up at higher level, and that's why my career at that point was kind of established, and I had already beat guys like Ankalaev, had beat Jamal Hill, but the level of guys I was fighting was through the roof at the point when I left to go to higher level. And if it wasn't for higher level, improving my striking, making me a much better striker, and working with guys like Adam Lusby and working with Lee Rickards, my career wouldn't have been half as good as it was.
So,
excuse me. We went off on a bit of a tangent there, didn't we?
We did, it's amazing, but we'll keep on that, and then we're going to have to jump back to the start, because I want to touch a lot on the upbringing and how you got to where you did. Such a good story and a lot of seminal moments. That coaching team you talked about, is that a coaching team that came with you throughout your journey in the UFC up to that stage?
So my original start for this was, I had a friend who invited me to this class, and it was, he said, do you fancy doing UFC chokes? And that's what we called the class. I had no idea what BJJ was, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I had no idea what MMA was, mixed martial arts. He says, do you want to come and do UFC chokes? I had no idea what UFC was, had never seen the UFC at this point, and I'm maybe like 24, 25, somewhere in this sort of realm. Go to this class, it's the weirdest, see if you've never seen this sport before. And I go in, and the gym wasn't the best either. Mould in the walls, it's steamed, like, you know, that sort of sweat that kind of hovers in the air. And just guys rolling about, sweating all over each other. It was like, this is weird. I don't know if this sport's for me. It turns out it really was for me. Turns out I absolutely love rolling about with half-naked, sweaty guys in a dirty mat. So this was my first experience there, and my coach, after I'd done that first session, the first move I learned was a Kimura. You would learn the Kimura, and I learned the Kimura trap. That was the first move I ever learned, and he showed me it, my coach. And he later on said to me, he was like, you caught me in that the first time the very first session you he showed me the Kimura. I caught him in the
You shot
exact...
him in it really?
And he said, you nearly burst my arm because I wasn't tapping, because I couldn't let you tap me in your first night. He's like, I'm the coach. But at that point, he didn't have a belt. He came from a shitty gym as well. And it was like, every bit of information we were getting told was like kind of third hand. There was like a couple of black belts in the UK. There was a black belt in Marcus Nardini in Scotland. And he was coming up once a week, twice a week to show us some jiu-jitsu technique, proper jiu-jitsu technique. And then from that, we then started bringing in boxing, we then started bringing in wrestling coaches, and they started building. So when I started, we were training 2 days a week. That was it, for an hour and a half each session. That's all I was training. And then as we started to get better, then we started to get a little bit more mat time, because the gym we were using wasn't actually our gym. Right. So then we started getting a wee bit more space, right? We're going to start doing a Saturday morning. Saturday morning is now becoming 2 hours, and then and eventually the coach took over the gym, and then we ran a full MMA program where we were developing, I was developing as my coach was developing. We were a blue belt together, we were a purple belt together, brown belt together. So I had just threw myself right in. I enjoyed learning moves, I enjoyed learning, and I had this in my head, if I'd missed this move, then somebody else knows this move and I don't know it, they might beat me with it, and I just can't have that. Right. So I went to every single session, I learned all the moves, and we progressed together. But then it got to a point where I just kept progressing with regards to learning about nutrition, sports psychology, fitness, because we pretty much came from like the old school method where you just do it because I'm telling you to do it. And I can't have just somebody saying, what is it we're trying to encompass here? What do we want for this session? We're just doing the session because I'm telling you to do the session. No, I need a reason. What is it we want to get for this session? And I know you should never ever question your coach, but if you don't have if you're starting to waver in your belief in your coach, then he has to back up why he's coaching you this way. And I remember I go in one day and we were doing this session where he'd made me do an 8-minute round, and I'd done my 8-minute round, and I'd done my teammates' 8-minute round, and I stormed off and I left in a huff because I knew it wasn't doing anything. And after I've settled down, I'm a guy who, if you confront me right there and then, I'm going to be a prick. I know I'm just going to blow off and I'm going to be wah, and I'm not going to be able to express what I'm trying to say to you. So rather than doing that, I left. And a wee half, jumped in my car, thought about it, come back the next day and said, what was the point of that session? And he goes, to make you tough. And I said, I don't need to be tough. I'm already tough. I get pretty much the shit kicked out of me for 15 minutes with Ankalaev. I am as tough as they come. I don't need somebody in the gym pushing me to make me tougher. He's like, I'm the coach, that's my session. And then from that point, we started to argue more and more and more. He had his way of doing coaching, I didn't like it, and you should never ever, like, even if you don't believe in your coach at that point, you should never ever confront him in front of his students. And that was my fault. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that. And I know that now. So we got to a point where we just started getting further and further apart, and that's why I had to make a decision. And it was a selfish decision. And I left a lot of my friends and training partners behind. And it was hard to maintain their relationships and new relationships. And when I joined higher level, the guys kicked the shit out of me. Not a word of a lie, they came for me.
Did James tell him to go after you?
He did. And it was Sean Clancy. Sean Clancy told me, James told me to go for you. And I was like, well, I knew that. And one of the people who were nice to me was Kerr. Reid was like the only guy who was nice to me the whole 6 months. But I had been a prick to a higher level for a number of years. I'm talking like...
so you'd been going at them before?
I had been sniping at higher level guys for a long period of time. So they had no reason to be nice to me. Why would they allow an enemy into their camp? And then after the 6 months and after I sort of took my medicine, they kind of were like, right, you're in.
What keeps you going back there when you're going in? And I mean, because I guess at that stage, you're not feeling hugely wanted, are you?
Nah. There was days, like, I remember driving up to the higher level gym and just feeling like, I don't want to do this. But I'm fighting the UFC. So there's the fear of failure in the UFC. and that's more overwhelming than the fear of getting battered in higher level. And I'm telling you, man, I get lit up like a Christmas tree. Session after session after session, man. I was training in there twice a day, and the guys were coming at me hard.
And ironically, your previous coach actually gets what he wants there, because what better way to make you tough than to put you in a load of guys that's trying to annihilate you?
So going from the coaching side, like James is an amazing coach. James, he is very much a man managing coach. He's got all the guys and he knows how to deal with each individual differently.
Right.
He doesn't, it's not a blanket approach. He doesn't teach me the same way he taught Stevie Ray. He doesn't teach Danny Henry the same way he teaches Sean Clancy. And he said some of the best guys coming through his gym, be it for Thai boxing, when you're looking at guys like Chrissy Shaw, or for mixed martial arts when you're looking at guys like Stevie Ray. Like, I don't see myself in the same realm as these guys, like, and I know it sounds silly, but guys like Stevie Ray, like, he's been there and done that. He was one of the first UFC guys. He beat some of the who's who in that division, and it's a very tough division, and he done it convincingly. Whereas I don't see myself in that same sort of realm as him, because I don't believe in luck in this sport. Is it luck that I caught the triangle in the last second against Ankalaev? Absolutely not. It comes down to repetition, it comes down to your ability. But Stevie Ray done things convincingly, whereas I done things that was like, hey, I got a submission. And I know it's just how I feel, and I know people will be like, no, Paul, you're 100% done loads for Scottish mixed martial arts, but I just feel Stevie Ray was the boy.
It's so cool to hear you say that, and I think that where you finished up there is a good point, because a lot of time people go, but no, you did, but like, it doesn't matter, this is how I feel.
Aye.
And it's quite humbling to hear you say that, because as someone who is, I mean, you were a superstar in UFC, proper cult hero and a legend in UFC, but to hear you say you still don't rank yourself up there, and even using that word UFC legend, see, when I say, like, when I hear people saying UFC legend, I'm like, it's a bold statement to make. Or even guys who are calling themselves like veterans in the UFC. Yeah. I'm a UFC veteran. I wouldn't even call myself a UFC veteran. I would say I used to fight in the UFC. Yeah. But are you a UFC legend? No. Are you a UFC veteran? No, just a guy that fought in the UFC, and I've done all right at it. And 21 fights in the UFC, that's what I had, which is bonkers. When I first started mixed martial arts, I had no concept of what the UFC was, or I had this dream of being a UFC fighter. And as I went along my journey and said more yeses than nos, it took me to this point to being a UFC fighter. And I don't think I was better than anybody else. There's guys that I've trained with in the gym who are far superior training partners than I was, and should have made it to the UFC, or should have made it to a very high level in the world of mixed martial arts. And there was something that just, my journey was different. Is that because of the style that you had? Like, you were,
I don't know,
very, very good on your back. Like, you hear the praise that you got from people like
Joe Rogan. It's always cool to hear him.
Says you're sensational. The guard that your guard is the best example you can show to any UFC fighter, he said.
I know, it's cool, isn't it? Like,
it's incredible.
Like, people send me these clips and I'm like, Joe, because as I said, Joe Rogan was the guy at the start, and even now, if Joe Rogan says something, the vast majority of the mixed martial arts community will listen to him. If he says everybody's learning this move because this is the move, everybody will go, yep, there we go. And he was one of the guys that made me develop my spinning back kick, because I looked at him and went, that's devastating. So I've got a lot of love for Joe Rogan. I would love to just actually sit and talk with Joe Rogan. Like, I've had these moments where I don't like to get close to famous people, because I don't want them to waste the illusion that I've got.
Right, okay.
So, like, getting to meet, like, they're like favourite bands. Biffy Clyro's my favourite band. Right. I find it very difficult to talk to them when they message me and speak to me.
Right.
As like there's a fan, them saying to me, oh, Paul, I love your style and that kind of stuff. I'm like, cool. And I'll kind of cut conversations off, because I don't want to waste the illusion of them being these... You've
been like the distant bird with Biffy Clyro.
I know, I'm playing hard to get. But it's just how I am, and I guess it'd be the same with Joe Rogan. I wouldn't want him to waste how I perceive him.
I think the difference with Joe Rogan is that you listen to him speak for hours and hours on end. Like, he's no fronting. and I'm not saying that Biffy Clyro are, but like Biffy Clyro, you have 3 minutes of a song, and you can listen to that and interpret that how you want to interpret that. So if you're listening to that and you're in a good mood, or your daughter's just been born, or whatever it might be, that's the meaning that song brings to you. And I guess with them, if you then meet them and he tells you, oh no, I was actually, I don't know, whatever it might be, having a shitty time when I wrote that song, you start to change that opinion of that song. It might break that song down for you, but whereas Joe Rogan, you can listen to him for 3 hours on end.
Easy.
And he's no...
Think how much, have you listened to another person as much as you've listened to somebody like Joe Rogan? Think about commentary, think about podcasts. Like, even if you're like, oh, I don't listen to any Joe Rogan podcasts, I guarantee you if you're skipping by one of these reels and you're like, oh, that's Joe Rogan talking.
Definitely.
So thinking about, like, is he a person that I've listened to the most without actually actively trying to listen to him? He probably is. He probably is. Can you think of anybody else in your life?
I mean, I love Chris Williamson, so I listen to him a lot. But
so even podcast.
Even then, I first listened to him on Joe Rogan, and that's how I was introduced to him. And I like Joe Rogan's stand-up and that as well. Again, because he's if I watched him in isolation doing stand-up, I probably wouldn't love. I don't love his jokes. I don't. But when you've listened to him for so long on the podcast,
and
you get to appreciate that.
You feel you know him.
Aye, you feel like you know where his jokes were born. Aye, no, that's a good point.
Aye, like I can't think of MD, like probably musician-wise, there's obviously bands you've listened to a lot more, but somebody just sitting talking, I don't think so. Even if you think about like going back to being a kid, watching TV shows, like there was nothing like the amount of information I've got now.
Nah.
You would have 4 channels. I grew up with 4 channels, and that's all you had, and you'd pick what you wanted to watch. But now we're in a world where we have all this information, and as you sift through it, Joe Rogan's still coming out as one of the best podcasters that ever done it.
Totally. And you see how much he swayed the last election as well after Trump went on. Like
it's wild.
The polls just went the whole opposite way, and that was probably where Trump won it last time, was by going on to Rogan, becoming a bit more,
making himself a people person, as opposed to going to these UFC events, as opposed to that's a whole market that he tapped into, and people bought into him.
Totally.
Like I don't know what it's like in America now. I don't imagine the guy's getting as much love as he once did.
Who knows, man?
I know, when you think about, like, I was lucky enough to fight in Madison Square Garden, which is in its own right a really cool thing. But to then fight in front of the president of the world, doesn't matter if you love Donald Trump or you hate him, but to fight in front of the US president, the most powerfulest man in the world, take away who he is, if it had been Bill Clinton or like George Bush, just to fight in front of one of these people or showcase what you're capable of doing in front of one of the world leaders is pretty cool, man.
And that's where it, like, again, I think it's amazing that you said, like, you don't rank yourself with Stevie Ray, but you were the first Scottish guy to headline an event. You fought in front of the president, you were on Fight Island, you've been to all these different amazing places. So it's so funny to hear yourself say that you still don't rank yourself up there.
And like even now when I think about like fighters, UK fighters, I'm like, I still look at these guys as celebrities. Like Davey Grant, like this guy's been fighting for years, he's like 41 or something like that. I don't think I'm in the same realm as this guy. Whereas he maybe has that as well. Maybe he's thinking like, I'm not in the same realm as X, Y and Z. He's got his own thoughts as well. But for me, I never ever try to compare myself to these other people. It sounds really cheesy. Like, I never compare myself to anybody else, but I kind of put people on a pedestal who I think are very good at their job. And Stevie Ray for me was one of the guys. Joe Rogan's one of the guys. There's loads of people who I think are absolutely brilliant at what they do. Like we spoke about Ross Edgley. When you're looking at your books there, like Ant Middleton, these guys are all like top level guys, and I would never ever put myself in the same bracket as them.
What do you, maybe you just answered that question prematurely there, but what do you think you would have to do before you would rank yourself? Obviously the UFC is not quite going to be there, but I don't think you're just talking about the UFC, I just think it's as a person as a whole. What will you have to do for you to have that legacy in your own head?
I don't even know. I don't think it'll ever be.
Really?
I guess it comes down to that. It's the same again, it sounds cheesy, but have you ever heard Matthew McConaughey talking about who he wants to be?
No.
I'm going to butcher it. I always butcher these kind of things because it's just who I am. He says, he gets asked this question, who would you like to be? And he goes, me in 3 years' time or me in 5 years' time. And then he gets there and he's like, who do you want to be? And he's like, me in 3 years' time. He's always wanted to be better than he is. He's trying to chase about being great. And I'm not trying to be great. That's 100%. I'm not trying to be like, I'm the best guy in the world. I'm not. I've got so many issues that, like, we've spoken about a few of them before we came on here, that have been developed through fighting.
That's actually why you're here, mate, so if you could just list those all out and we'll get...
and like, just tell me all your emotional trauma.
But that constant...
I'm just wanting to be better, like, I'm just trying to be a better person than I was yesterday. I'm trying to beat that guy that I was yesterday, and that's why I enjoyed mixed martial arts, because I was always improving. That's why I enjoyed trying to be a triathlete, because I'm always improving. I'm trying to get better. So when I ran that first marathon with me, you, your brother, and Kieran, I was disappointed. I'd ran a marathon in under 5 hours, and I was so disappointed. I was so upset that I had ran a marathon under 5 hours.
Man, I think you also, what you miss out for there is, sorry, we forgot to mention Jordan as well.
Jordan was there as well, aye.
Great company. But what you miss out for that is, like, you were, 13 weeks into retirement? Retirement.
I know.
Like, that's not your normal path to retirement as a marathon.
I know, I look at people who do marathons, and I've always put them in a pedestal way above most athletes. I don't think... Yep, 100%. When I think about weightlifters who lift really heavy weights, and I'm like, right, that's you can train really hard to get there. See, to have the ability to run for 4 hours as a like, I'm just using like an average 4-hour marathon pace, or running even 2 hours, a marathon that just happened a few weeks ago. Like, that's mind blowing to me. And it's something so simple that requires nothing, but requires so much. Anybody can run with a pair of trainers. You don't need a watch. Pair of trainers and a pair of shorts, that's all you need. But it's overcomplicated with like gels, blah blah blah. To run a marathon is an incredible achievement for any human. So in my head, marathon runners are like the ultimate athletes. I don't care people who can run 100 metres. Like when I think about Usain Bolt setting records, or I think about hurdleists, or whatever the sport is I'm comparing them to, marathon runners are just, they're built differently.
They're up there for you.
Aye, they're like, for me, they're the peak of human achievement. Right. What your body are capable of. I'm using weightlifting again, and I'm not shitting on weightlifters, because when I think about Eddie Hall lifting, like deadlifting,
incredible,
like nose bursting, and he's strapped himself, and I think it's an amazing thing. But I think it's much easier to train for.
Right.
I could be massively wrong, because I don't do a lot of weightlifting.
But I think your thoughts on it is quite important as well, because it, like, I said this to Kieran the other week there, where you say, like, a backyard ultra almost sounds quite easy until it's not. But I think that's interesting to see your thoughts on it, because it's who you are, right? And like, there's no easy training for a world record, or there's no easy training to do what Eddie Hall's done. But your thoughts are your thoughts, and I think they're.
And I think it comes down to that shortness as well. How short is it to? I don't mean short in the sense of, because obviously you'll have to go through all these different periods, and he's been doing this for he was a young kid, and he's obviously genetically a freak as well. But you're lifting maybe 1 or 2, and it's a crazy amount of weight, and there's loads of stuff that goes into it. But see, when you're saying, I'm going to start running a marathon, nobody starts running a marathon and is like, I just busted a 3-hour marathon. We're talking like, let's say 4 hours, because that's what I wanted for my marathon. When I started doing that, and I ran a half marathon in 2 hours, I was like, right, that's just doing that again. That's easy. I done 2 hours for a half marathon. I'm so delusional. So when I hit the 5 hours, and I was so disappointed.
Were you really? You didn't see it?
I was like, I never even put that medal on.
Right, wow.
So I mean, you think about like people were wearing their medals and all.
I
was so disappointed.
You didn't come across like that, which is.
And even when I come back, and I spoke to my wife, and she's like, "Oh, well done," and I was like, "Aye." She's like, "You not happy?" And I was like, "No." She's like, "How no?" And I was like, "Because I failed." And she's like, "How?" And I said, "Because I failed running a marathon in 4 hours." And she's like, "No, Paul, you ran a marathon in 5 hours." And I was like, "I know, but I wanted 4." And she's like, "Aye, but that's just how this went." So then see, when I signed up for the next marathon, I was like, I'm getting this under 4 hours. I'm getting this under 4 hours. and we'd spoke about crossing the line with my kid.
Yes.
And there's a video of me as I've got her, and I look at my watch because I know I'm so close to getting this 4 hours. And I'm thinking, do I just throw on the grunt and then sprint across? But no, it was what an experience. Like, I'd spoke to him. I'm working with a triathlete coach, and he'd said to me, he's like, just run at this pace. And I said, I can run faster. And he's like, no. He's like, run at this pace. He's like, because the damage you're going to do to your body is going to then, you're going to compound it for the next few weeks, rather than I need you to get back at training because you've got an Ironman coming up.
Of course.
So he was like, I need you to run at this pace. He said, you can run from here to here. That's where I want you. And I was like, right, well, I want 4 hours. And he said, run at this pace and you'll get your 4 hours. So I start off and I'm blasting these 5:20s, and I'm like, I need to stop. I need to slow right the way down. And that was hard because I knew I wanted under 4 hours. And I knew I had to then go back to train for my Ironman. But it was so fucking hard to kind of put my foot off that gas and run at that 5:40. But glad I done it. But for me, as I said,
you smashed it in the end, didn't you? You got sub 4, right?
I did. And it was by the skin of my teeth. But marathon runners are just the boys. And especially like to run a marathon in under 2 hours right now is incredible.
That's obscene.
For anybody that's ever ran a 10k and they've maybe spent 30 minutes and doing a 5k or doing a 10k in an hour, or you must be able to appreciate how quick this man ran a full marathon, and the time people run 10ks and half marathons is mind blowing.
That's obscene, man.
Like how much training he's went through, how much preparation with regards to gels, with regards to time under tension. It blows my mind how impressive that is.
And I think I can totally relate to a lot you said there. The first time I done London, I had a nightmare. I done it in 4:07, and
But you got your redemption.
I got my redemption, but I was miserable. And every time I went to London after it, I just had this wee thing like, I couldn't do this. I couldn't get it done. I couldn't. And so it's weird because you say it, and I'm like, honestly, man, like you just done a 5-hour marathon. You were 13 weeks into retirement. And I could have gave myself all the excuses under the sun about that first marathon I done.
But
it didn't matter. I didn't feel it.
Aye.
And
you can put all these excuses. I only done. The furthest I'd ever ran was only 21k. Doesn't matter. It's just running. It's just. I remember speaking to Kerr Smith about this, and I said, and he's like, "You sure you want to do this?" And I was like, it's just putting one foot in front of the other. And I was like, it's just doing a half marathon again, and it's until you actually break it down, and you're in there, and you're in the fire, and you're like, oh, this is far fetched, just running a half marathon twice.
And he so that makes sense that you were saying that you had those conversations first, because as soon as he got you at the finish line, he was like, what's harder, a training camp or a marathon?
Aye.
He was desperate for you to say how hard it was, wasn't he?
It was super hard. It was so hard. I would rather do a full training camp again. Because even though right now I'm in a training camp, so when I look back at how did I manage to shave an hour off my marathon? Right, well I done a training camp. That's what I did. I done a whole training camp for a marathon. So how am I going to do my first Ironman? I'm going to do a whole training camp. I need to go through these proper cycles of peaking, dipping. There's days where you don't want to go out and run. There's days you don't want to go into the wrestling class. There's days you don't feel your wrestling class, or there's days you don't feel your run, you feel like shit. It's all the same thing. I'm retired for fighting. I'm retired for getting punched in the face, and I'm just doing something differently. I'm doing training camps no matter how I look at it. And I'm going to keep doing them until the day I die.
You think you will?
I want to. My favourite quote, and I say it all the time, any podcast I'm on, no man should leave this earth without knowing what his body's capable of. It's Marcus Aurelius. It's a great, like, no man, and see when I look at, and this goes for men or women or whoever you sort of align your he, she, them, whatever it is, everybody has the potential to do anything in this world, and just not a lot of people do it. When I think about my dad and his potential, my dad was a working class guy, he worked his whole days, he was a mechanic, coach builder, panel beater, started driving lorries because he wanted life a wee bit easier. By the time he hit 40, he had a heart attack through bad choices of life, through eating processed meats, through eating junk food, through sitting in his ass, lack of movement. But when I think about my dad as a young guy, like, I think my dad would have went through me like a dozy of salts. Like me at my peak fighting,
right.
I think my dad would have took me to town. I genuinely believe that. And I had a conversation with one of my uncles, and my uncle was like, do you honestly think you could beat your dad? And I was like, aye. And he's like, no, you couldn't.
Really?
My uncle told me point blank, he's like, no, not a chance. So when I think about the potential he had as a young man, and how life just got in his way, and he never achieved what his body, like he's still living. I make that sound like he's not there anymore.
A tiny bit.
But he's what, 65, he's in his mid-60s, and he's just let his body, he's just gave up on it. He's gave up on it, he doesn't train it, he doesn't want to eat healthy, he's got diabetes, life's just getting in his way. And he's just decided, yep, that's what I do. Whereas he never experienced what it's like to, like, and I use this as well. Brendan Allen cut my face open, an absolute screamer. He dropped this herb onto my face just before the end of the second round, right? And he split my eyebrow open, and I could feel the bone, right? And it sounds mental, but see, experiencing that, see when you know your body just doesn't break under that kind of stuff, it's an amazing feeling. And I remember standing up, and there's a cracking picture of me, and it's just me, and I'm walking towards the camera, and you just see the blood running down my face. One of the greatest moments in my life. I felt what it's like to have your face split open and know you can keep going to the cornerman stops it from bleeding, he puts like adrenaline into it, closes up the vessels and the pump the blood, and then you go again, and then the guy punches it and it just rips open again. And no man is going to experience that the way I've experienced it. And that's what life is for me, experiencing something that makes your body, like, my body never shattered there. My body just didn't say, oh, I'm cut, that's it, we gave up. It kept going, and it'll keep going as long as I keep asking it to go. And that's what everybody should experience.
That's amazing.
Aye, like, be it running a marathon, be it showing your kids how great you are. Like, see, running across that marathon line with my daughter, like, she's 11, she's probably never ever going to remember that experience of what it feels like running across that line with her dad, who just ran 4 hours.
You'll be surprised, man.
But she's got images, like, she's got pictures, she's got videos, but see, for me, oh my God.
That's incredible.
Like, the experience of running a 4-hour marathon and crossing that line with your daughter is fucking amazing. And incredible. Just to inspire your kids.
Would you be as happy if you missed your sub 4 because you carried?
I would have. I mean, it would have hurt me, but I knew I would have been able to do it.
I'm kidding.
And like I'd said so I ran it with my sister, and she had been running for a long period of time. She'd been running for maybe a few years before she got to the point of running a marathon. She never ever wanted to run a marathon, and I said, why not? She just didn't want to do it. Didn't have the confidence. I can't run a marathon. It's like the ultimate thing of being a runner, is running a marathon, unless you go the mental case side and you go backyard ultras, or I'm going to run an ultra.
Aye.
But she never done it, so I signed her up for it without telling her. And the thing I wanted for her was to finish this marathon.
Right.
So the first time I'd seen my partner, my sister's partner, I'd said, how's she doing? Is she doing all right? And they're like, aye, she's absolutely smashing it. See, at that moment, I was like, yes. That for me was a great moment, because she is now going to experience what her body's capable of.
Yes.
She finished a marathon, and I knew she was capable of it. And I knew she's capable of running far quicker than she did. And she knows she is now. Because I'd said that to her, we had this conversation, but she now knows her body's capable of doing this. And I'm like, is there something else? Do you want to push us harder? She's like, no, I know my body's capable of it. And that for me was an amazing feeling. And she'd said to me, she went, you would have ran away and left me. And I was like, no, I wouldn't have. I would not have left you, because I wanted you to experience what your body's capable of. And that's one of the ways I live my life. That's
a gift. It's amazing. And sorry, I kind of dipped into the jest earlier to say, would you have, been annoyed? But of course you wouldn't have been annoyed if you got the sub 4, because you knew you could have done it. But you were going into a great bit of detail about you get this elbow to the face, and it's like your eye bursts. And I guess what's happening is that's some people's worst fear. If I think back to like school, I couldn't really fight at school.
You were like a rabbit in the headlights. If the worst thing that somebody can do to you in high school is punch you in the face.
100%.
Because you don't know what your face is going to do. Emotionally, psychologically, what it looks like to other people, blah, 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 blah. I lost so many fights in school. I was never a fighter in school. Like, I've taken more losses in school than I've taken anywhere in my life. I never ever threw a punch. I've thrown 2 great punches in my whole life. Like, the 2 greatest punches I have thrown have not been in the octagon.
Really?
They've not been in the octagon. They've been in the real world, and I've broke 2 people's jaws. Like, one was in a football park, one was in a wrestling ring as a part of what would you call it, like a show. I was going to punch a referee in the face,
right, okay.
shattered his jaw.
Right.
Best punch I've ever thrown in my life. Why the fuck was I not in the UFC? And like, for high school was rough because you were scared of these mental kids who had the experience what it was like getting punched in the face.
That's it. They
know
know it's
what
not
it was
going to
like.
break them.
Like, it doesn't break me. I can just keep going.
Aye.
I can go hard. Whereas if you grow up in a nice environment where your parents are like, it sounds mental that your parents are like tormenting you or abusing you or any that kind of stuff, then you never know what it's like to be hit. Like, I was struck as a kid. Struck, that sounds like a very strong word. I was struck as a kid, but I was disciplined as a kid, but no punch in the face.
No.
Like, I was a grown man. I was a teenager by the time I'd actually been punched properly in the face by an actual other grown man hitting you, boom, and you're like, oh, right, wait, I didn't break. Right, let's go. I can keep going.
And that's just the marathon on a smaller level, isn't it? Where you've had to go through that hardship. Your worst fear is being faced, and you go,
wasn't that bad?
I'm actually all right. In your instance, that's fucking great.
Once you realise your body isn't going to break, like, we can keep going, just keep pushing. And I think that's why people do ultra marathons, because they've known, they're like, right, I signed up for a marathon, I did the marathon, I'm now like, it wasn't enough. I need more. I need to know I'm capable of more. So then it becomes Ironman or the 70.3. Once you hit that, you're like, I need more.
There's something else.
There's something else. And then as long as I keep pushing like that, I'll be cool. But I needed that when I needed something to steer myself when I retired.
Well, it's been quite quick, hasn't it? And that's one of the things I wonder is have you taken time to reflect back and appreciate what you've done?
I don't. I know for a fact I haven't. I don't know when I'll do it. I love telling people about my journey, but I probably have never experienced it properly, because when I say I've not experienced my journey properly, I was always looking for the next thing. And I'm still the same. I never really appreciated running a marathon because I'm looking at the next thing. I'll not appreciate running Ironman because I'm looking at the next Ironman. The same was when you win in a fight, the victory lasts for moments. You get your hand raised, you feel amazing, everybody around about you tells you how amazing you are, you then leave the octagon and everybody's, we have a few beers, we enjoy a good time. And then you're back to reality. Monday morning, after you've fought the Saturday night, you have the Sunday, you have a bit of madness. Once you're back to Monday morning, everybody goes back to their world, their real life. Coaches go back to coaching, nutritionists go back to doing their job, boom, 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 and you're just kind of left there. What's next? Well, I'll tell you what's next. You want that feeling again, because then you need to go and have another fight, and then you then start chasing these fights, and you start losing everything that's happening before you. Like, you're constantly looking over the hill and no looking about what's here in front of you, and that's what I did for my whole career. Just chasing fights, chasing that feeling. Whereas losses haunt you. Losses are the horrible, like, the thing that still sits in your shoulder. For a long period of time, I would open up cupboards and just go after a loss and go, like, I'm talking like 6 weeks after a fight, and I'm maybe going to the fridge to maybe get like a bit of water or a drink or a bit of food, and you go, it would just, whereas a win's not like that, a win, when you go, yeah,
you know, but I mean,
open up the cupboard going, fuck yes, you open up the cupboard and go, oh.
But like, so that ankle live moment, like that's one of the best finishes in UFC history, right? And like, I mean, he's went on to be absolutely elite. Are you still the only loss in his record?
I think Pereira beat him. Beat him, so he's got 2 losses, me and Pereira, which isn't to be sniffed at,
No, absolutely not. But so you must have that moment where, like, you just...
I never even got to experience it because I was worried about, because after that fight, I was the last fight in my contract. I'm worrying about my career. I'm worrying about what do I do next. I'm worrying about, have I made the wrong decision to go and become a full-time fighter? So I never got to be like, yes. And then it wasn't until the Monday morning when I get a phone call where they go, we're another contract, 4 fights, well done.
Wow.
And then I'm like, yeah, so then I'm not excited for the fight, I'm not excited for the victory or how I won, I'm excited for the prospect of still running this
fights,
sort of, still living this dream. And then the same thing happens, then you go through a couple of losses, you go through a couple of wins. The closest I got to being a champion was when I so I went on a tear, beat Jamal Hill. Jamal Hill went on a tear, and the twos were on this sort of like, we were on this realm to fight again. Only lost in that guy's record, he was starching folk. I go in a fight in London and I don't get the victory, but it's no the end of the world. I have a horrible, I was going through a big moment in my career, but I lose anyway. And then they say, do you want to go to Brazil and fight Johnny Walker? You beat Johnny Walker, you're fighting for the title. Because Jamal Hill's fighting Glover Teixeira for the title. It's happening right there, and I lose to Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker absolutely panels me within minutes, and then that title shot's gone, and then I have to have this conversation about how can I regenerate my career, rejuvenate it, because I'm in this sort of slump. Maybe I move to middleweight. I've got a great opportunity. I'm big, I'm athletic. There's not a lot of jiu-jitsu guys in there. And the first fight we have, I absolutely smash it, beat a top 15 guy, become I think it was number 8 as a middleweight. And then the UFC then start firing these absolute beast cities. So they fire me, Brendan Allen. And the way they get me to, they don't strong arm me into taking these fights. I want to take these fights because I want to fight the best. I would hate to leave this career with fighting shit guys. I would hate to get to the end of my career and be like, I had 21 fights and I lost. I won every single one of them. But all the people I fought were absolute bums.
It's not. What are you capable of?
Aye, you would never beating somebody. Even when I beat people, I sort of. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But where was I going with that? Like, it was about trying to beat the best in the UFC through me, Brendan Allen. And they were like, you want to be the first Scottish person to headline a UFC card. No other Scottish person has headlined the UFC card. I'm in. Do you want to fight in Madison Square Garden? No other Scottish guys walked out here. Yep. Do you want to have a redemption fight? Yep. And I always said, I never ever backed down for a fight. There was never a chance, even knowing that I was going to lose fights, I never ever said, no, I don't want to do that. Having in the back of my head that I can't beat this guy. And it's there. Kyle Barallo's a perfect example of this. When I was going into that camp, and then when you were fighting Kyle Barallo, I was like, this guy's good. This guy's very good. His skill set is super high for both jiu-jitsu and striking, and he's hot. See, by the end of that camp, I was ready to fucking beat him.
Right.
I believed in my own abilities. I'm beating this guy. I'm beating this guy everywhere, be it striking or grappling. I am beating him. It just never happened. But what a turnaround. Like, I genuinely believed as I was stepping in the octagon, I was beating him. First round, I was like, I'm the man.
And what's the days like following that? So you said that there was obviously the one loss where you went down to middleweight and thought, right, I'm going to try almost kind of, you've had the Johnny Walker, you're not getting the title fight there, you moved down. What's it like when you've went into a camp, you're flying, you feel like you could beat him, any different way that it's going to go, you take that loss? What's the days like that?
They're horrible. A loss is always horrible. As I said, it haunts you, like, because it's the mark of a loser, I call it. The mark of a loser is I should have, I would have, I could have done that to him. See, if I had, like, when I think about Brendan Allen, if I'd done this to Brendan Allen, I could have beat him. Of course you could have. If he'd done this to you, if he'd knocked you out with his first punch, he could have beat you. But, like, so I tend not to live in that coulda, woulda, shoulda, because I don't want to be that mark of a loser. But it's horrible. You think about it, it consumes you, and then you go back to the gym and you try and push it out, but it's still there. You try and rectify your last loss, and that's what kept me fighting the last few fights. I had planned in my head that I was going to retire after I moved back up to light heavyweight, have one last hurrah, and that was me. Then the fight gets cancelled due to herpes. Then I was like, right, I'm going to go and become, they offer me this fight again in a few weeks, and I say, yep, I'm going to take it, and then I end up getting the no contest with up kick. That was going to be my last fight, and I'm like, I can't end my career in a no contest. So then I signed up for another fight, and the same thing happens. It's like, I lose, but I'm happy because I can leave this all behind me. I can leave the sport of mixed martial arts and be happy. I don't do any coaching, I don't do any striking, I don't do any wrestling with any of the guys. I've cut the ties to that world of mixed martial arts. The only thing I do is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I love it. So then I'm now on a different path in my journey, which is cool.
How did you cope with that retirement? You went from like fighting at the biggest stage in them all, you know, record after record, amazing cult hero moment after legendary moment. How do you deal with that when you stand in the octagon and say, right, I'm done with this?
There's still this moment that drags you into the world of fighting. You're like, I could do one more. And I've had a few offers. So I've had, would you like to fight Darren Till in a bare knuckle boxing match? And I would love to have a bare knuckle boxing match. I'd love to feel the madness of bare knuckle boxing. But do I just then become a journeyman who's just looking for either your paycheck, which I've never been driven by money, or I'm looking for this madness, which I'm driven by. I'm driven by madness. Madness, there's something that I love about just the chaos of fighting. I love the fact that you can have your nose shattered, or you can break your foot, or I love all that, the unknown. But you have to be smart, and there has to be the point of, why did I retire for the UFC? Because they offered me, like, for that last fight, they offered me another 4 fights and 5 fights. Really? I had a 5-fight contract with 4 fights still left on it.
Ah, right.
So you could easily say, the UFC could have cut you after that loss to Modestus. They could have cut me. They could have, but there was no reason for them to cut me, because it's not like I left and I was like, nobody knew who I was and I was just getting beat up every week. No, not at all. I was still one of the guys.
So why was your will to go stronger than your will to take money and continue?
My mind, because I made a deal with myself, and the number was, and it crept up to me, I made a deal with myself that the number I was leaving the sport was at 35.
Right.
And I'd openly put it out in a podcast, and I'd said to John Gooden, 35 is my number, I'm leaving at 35. 35 came, and there was like a couple of things that kept me in the sport. The reason I wanted to leave the sport was because I'd wanted to leave with my mind intact, and I wanted to leave where my body was still able to keep going, both mind and body, for the sake of my kids. Last thing I want to do is be sitting, being a vegetable, having brain damage, having maybe Alzheimer's, having issues with my body, joints, arthritis, all these kind of things. I wanted to be like, right, I need to go out before this happens. So 35 was the number. 35 came, and on my 36th birthday, I was 35, and they started saying about, this is when you said you were going to retire, Paul, was it in your head? And it was in my head, but the UFC had said, would you like to fight headline the Apex card? And I says, yep. I turned 36 in November, and I was in Vegas when my birthday had actually hit, and I was like, I want to do this. This is a cool thing, because as I said, I never ever done the sport for money. I never started earning money in the sport until I was well into the last part of my career, and even then it wasn't great money. It wasn't like I was like, life's good, man, I'm just going to retire and that's it. I made enough money to keep a nice life and look after my family. That's all I wanted. I never ever wanted to have millions in the bank, or that was never ever the driving force for me. But it was moments. Would you like to be the first UFC guy to headline, the Scottish guy to headline a card? Yes. That's a moment for me. So after that fight in Vegas, there then was the opportunity to fight Kyle Barallo in Sao Paulo, Rio. And I was like, my numbers came and went. I still felt this in before I turned 27, take that fight. And then after that, it was the reason they caught me to come back was the fight in New York in front of the president against Bo Nickel. And I was like, I need to do that. After that point, I had it in my head, I was retiring. That was me, I was done. Right. So after fighting Bo Nickel, win, lose or draw, I was done. And then they offered me the fight against, what was his name? this is why I retired, because I can't even think of guys' names. The Brazilian guy who ended up with the 2 fights, I was meant to fight him twice, it never happened the way it happened, and I needed a loss or a win on my record to leave the sport, and that's why I ended up with the last 3 fights. And by the time I retired, I was 37, so it caught up with me. I'll be 39 this year. I retired last September. So I believe it was the right time to walk away from the sport.
Well, there you go. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of episode 2 of the Gentrified Stoic Podcast with Paul Craig. We drop new episodes every second Friday, so you can see part 2 where we get into much more detail about Paul's career, what shaped him as a man, as well as how he manages to maintain discipline into retirement. That'll be out on the 12th of June, so please stay tuned. If you enjoyed the podcast today, please drop a comment and let us know what parts you liked. Please give us a like, please give us a subscribe, and please follow us along on the socials. Thank you so much and have a great day.